So yeah, let's dive right into things. I know there's some time change mix-ups for especially the North America people. So we'll dive in and get started with asking some questions. Do you have anything you want to add before we dive in?
No, let's just start going around
Awesome.
answering questions.
Yeah, who wants to go first?
Well, what do we want to focus on? What are you looking for from us right now?
So what we've been doing with these calls over the last few weeks is really just business Q&A, leadership Q&A questions. So just hot seat coaching style, whatever kind of questions that you guys want to dive into is your biggest one. And then we strategize and work through it and then come around circle to the next one.
Okay. So a couple things going on. Well, one is that like I'm all the way through module 5 in the SBA. Haven't done the stretch yet, but I haven't done the stretch in 3. I haven't done the stretch in 4, but I've listened to everything and I'm implementing things, but I'm finding that I'm either going to make an excuse for myself and say, okay, well, if I'm not able to do this at 100% and then be able to follow through with posting all my results and writing everything out into the group, then I'm not going to do it at all. And for a little while I was doing that and I went, no, I would much rather go through all of the teachings and then implement everything, like find where I can start immediately integrating it and implementing it into my leadership style, into the work that I'm doing with the clients. And the same thing like with the signature process, I was able to kind of clarify that. Like I know that jumps back into the SBI, but with the signature process going, okay, well, I'm not doing a program. I'm not intending to do a program anytime soon, but then realizing that as far as clarifying my signature process, even though I'm incredibly intuitive with my clients and just know that I move between, like when I start with them in a program, I move with them through reviewing and then identifying and then developing and then observing and then creating strategy and then checking in. And then I keep moving through those processes. And the other thing I've gotten clarification on is that, okay, yeah, I feel really good about how I'm doing it and that I take the client's desired outcome and then explain to them how we can make that way more expansive and create an even better outcome than what they believe with their limiting beliefs that they can achieve. And then we review the steps in working back from that outcome to where they are now, so that we're not going, okay, here's step 1, here's step 2, here's step 3, which logically it doesn't make a ton of sense, but it works for the type of business I'm doing. So that's been really effective. And the same thing like with the success stages, like that whole thing in the signature process, that's been really effective for me. And I'm finding overall in that the leadership work that I'm doing in here, had a couple instances now, and you guys know this, that clients have just, because I'm dealing with my own financial scarcity and, like generational bullshit, money bullshit that I have to work through, that's in my magnetic resonance. So even though I attract these like incredibly powerful, badass women who are like souls on fire, I'm also attracting women who have really bad financial scarcity issues. And so I've had two realizations. One is that like things are just freaking crumbling right now. I had another client who was like my lowest ticket client, who I've been calling her out. And I told someone else yesterday that she just messaged me like the day before her payment was due. Like, payment was due today. You guys know that I am like down to the wire as far as my budget right now in order just to be able to like keep this roof over my kid's head. And she backed out the last second. Last week and the week before, I was in a state of absolute panic. And now this week, I'm like, you know what? I set an incredibly big fucking intention to the universe. And every single low ticket client, with the exception of one, who was a girl that was in the immersion program, and I gave her a deep discount because I thought we were going to work through it together. All of them have dropped out because of their financial scarcity issues. And I'm not panicked by it anymore. I found this like odd, comfortable sense of peace about it, and just went, it has to crumble. And whatever happens, happens. My plan has been that I'm moving into tiny house living on land by June when my lease expires. But you know what? It might be happening in the next 2 weeks. And I'm actually totally at peace with that. And I'm okay with it. And I know that I will work it out. And I know that this is happening in order to create the space, because energetically, some of these clients were taking up more of my time because having to constantly call them out. But in dealing, I am so proud of myself for what's like my natural state of integrity as a leader, because the client yesterday like left me this super short message. It was total bullshit. And it was disrespectful to our relationship. It was disrespectful to all the work I've done with her. And I called her out on it. And I just was like, you know, you're not in your integrity. And I left her a whole long message. She left me back another message that was even more rude. And I called her out on it again. And I said, no, you've done enough work that you need to step up and you need to be greater than this version of yourself. And she did. And she did it this morning. And she left me a much better message. And, you know, acknowledged it and was like, yeah, you're right. And I got this, and this out of the program and out of working with you. But now I feel that this is where I'm at. Yeah. So I felt really good about it. I felt really good about how I've handled it with all of these clients. So that's where I'm at right now. And I'm continually working and moving forward and going bigger and going deeper in the work that I'm doing, and you know, working in the quantum healing and being way more comfortable with that, and saying, you know, it is okay for me to really embrace what it is I know, even though I don't have like a degree in sciences or, you know, psychology or something like that. So good.
Definitely. Cool. So is there any areas within that you want to dive a little bit deeper on?
I think the only thing right now is still that I'm harboring some guilt for not being more present within the group and sharing what it is I'm working on and implementing. You know, and I hate making excuses. It doesn't even like sit right with me. But the reality is there's only so much time a day that I could use these hands for being on the on the computer, on the phone, and writing. And I'm already doing so much. And usually by like 11 o'clock, my hands are cramped. So I'm like, okay, is that really the best use of my time? Is there something else I can be doing with my time that's helping to grow my business?
So I wonder if within that, like, first off is like, there's no need to have like any guilt and shame for anyone, you know, on how much you post or don't post and such within the group, because it's really like everybody's on their own journey. Like some people are going to share a lot, some people are doing the work, but it's like very much behind the scenes. But I feel like if you feel called to like utilize the space, you know, and like really feel like you're showing up at your 100%, is maybe even doing like short lives, you know, like coming in and doing a short live every couple days or once a week, or like asking questions or sharing wins in that way. So then that way you're not typing and you're not feeling like you have to wait, you know, for a certain like milestone or a certain thing in order to in and like share more of like the process of like what's going on, so you can be supported, I think, during the process. Anything you want to add?
No, I was going to say lives.
Yeah.
I can relate. I have issues with my wrists, so I try and do as less typing as possible.
You get it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I can totally do that. And I have done it. I have done it off and on. So yeah, I can be more consistent with that. Their group's incredibly supportive, you know. I mean, I've been more and more called up to just be completely transparent and completely vulnerable. And that feels more aligned now than it's ever felt before, in order to release. Like I think this is really good to share here, because I know I'm not the only one who experiences like generational money issues and financial scarcity issues. And I found a link the other day that I shared with you guys. I'm not going to do the whole long thing, but it was about me saying I'm not going to put myself out there to be in a relationship because I don't think that it's fair that I don't currently have the finances in place that I'd like to have in place to be able to support, going out and dating and things like that. And so that's what I've been telling myself, like, okay, I'm healthy enough to be in a relationship. I'm not worried about attracting the wrong person, because I've changed teams since I've stopped dating. So, and then I realized, as I was having a conversation with my like soulmate friend, who's also kind of my biz bestie, saying, we were talking about healing sexual trauma and how we can work that into that, not only our personal development, personal healing, but into our coaching, like, because as we learn, we teach. And as I'm talking it out, I had my, oh, fuck, I'm sabotaging myself financially by saying, well, what if there is something in me because of the sexual trauma and the sexual healing I still need to do? And my being afraid to be in a committed relationship, and I'm using the money as an excuse. So the universe is like, oh, so money's a reason why you're not in a relationship? Okay, let's not let you have that just yet. That way you don't have to be in a relationship. So I'm taking that out of the picture, and now I'm going to see what happens with it.
Awesome. So yeah, I feel like a lot of like self-trust right now, and just showing up in the way that really is expressing you, even if you're in your process. Like, I feel like that was a big thing too of this module for those of you that have worked into it, but it's been kind of a theme throughout is, even if you're in your process, or even if things are a little bit messy, like, you're still moving forward in the way that you can, whatever that looks like. So yeah, I feel like that would really speak to probably everybody on this call to some level, for sure. So in terms of who wants to go next, Chris and Cheryl, I know you hopped on a couple minutes afterwards. We're just doing hot seat coaching, and Elodie, I know you were here when we started, so you know this as well. So whoever wants to go next, just throw up your hand and we'll get you unmuted, and we'll talk about your business or your leadership and do some strategizing. Cool.
Elodie?
Go. There. You're unmuted.
Good?
Yeah.
Cool. Hi, everyone. So, well, me, I think I had trouble with my time, and I had lots of anxiety with dealing with my work. Yeah, I think I've always been workaholic. And so last week I did some change after a couple of posts and talk with you. And so far it's great. I had a great week. I mean, not on a personal level, but on a professional level, I had an amazing week. I finished everything that I had to do, and I had free time to enjoy my life and to break and to co-working with people and socialize. So it was great. I'm very proud of this.
Awesome.
Yeah. And then after, I wanted to ask you a question about one of my clients. So one of my goals would be, I had a client, she was very scared to take a VA on board because she's scared of delegating, and she was her first VA. So yeah, everything was smooth because she really appreciated me talking to her and let her the time to get into the task and everything. So we did, I started with her like a month ago, and we did a call where we do a review, make sure that she was fine. She felt okay with delegating, about the way that we communicate. She said that she was very happy, that she loved the fact that I give her suggestion and, not her, like, everything is fine. But anyway, my point is, part of my goal would be to increase the hour that she has with me. I don't know, I think I talked to you about this when on the first one call. She's the one that she was so a bit scared that I offer her kind of like 2 months special price, like a bit lower. And then I said to her, after the I give price for the 2 first months, and then after the 2 first months, either we increase and then you stay at this rate, or we stay at this number of hours, but then it would be the normal price. So this is the second month. So at the end of the month, I will have to figure it out. How can I approach this with her? How can I say to her, are you ready to delegate more? Like, I don't know. I never done that. So I'm not too sure how to approach it.
Do you want to start?
Sure. Yeah, I can start. Well, firstly, you're in a good space if you've already framed it when you were starting about this change. So I would just, you have your review calls. I would book a call and say, hey, we're coming to the end of our 2-month. I'd like to sit down and review, we talked about review our contract or our agreement that we had to make sure that we're both still in alignment with our business. I'm going to have some options to present with you, and we can discuss how we're looking to move forward to best support your business. And the real important thing about it is really making it about her. Like, what is the value you're bringing to her? And really come from the space of, what you've done for her, the results that you've achieved, and like what you could do for her. And like, so you talk about like how she's not wanting to delegate a lot of stuff. Well, go in with a number of proposed items about how you can give her more of her time back, and how you're going to take those objectives, whether it's like, I'm going to help her in another platform or increase hours, or I'm going to start direct messaging. And really each bullet point that you talk to her about, really make sure it's coming from the place of a value. Like, it should never be framed as like you thinking like, oh yeah, I'm going to make a little bit more money off of this. It should be framed of how you can save her time so that she can grow her business in other directions, while feeling like she doesn't have to stress because she knows you have processes in place.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like, I would just make it a really empowering conversation for her, and bring it back to the results that you've already been creating with her over these last 2 months. But I sense like it should be a fairly easy process. I know it's kind of uncomfortable because you've never done it before, but it should be fairly straightforward as well, just in the sense of you've already done half the work by telling her from the beginning that at 2 months, like, this will be a conversation, like a change will be happening. Either she'll be increasing the hours, or it'll be staying the same and the price will be changing. But either way, you've created like the perfect environment for you to talk to her and set up this call.
I also mentioned it's writing also in the agreement. So I wanted to have it clear, and I put it in the agreement. Because she was scared also about the pricing. So I don't want her to feel pressure because I see it that if she take more hour, if she take more hour, then the price per hour is still interesting for her. But if she stay at the same package, she will have the price per hour will be more expensive than it is now. So this is only why I see it. If she take more hour, it's more beneficial for her. That's why I was scared of maybe going this way.
Yeah. I think the big thing here, Elodie, is you need to be leading with the value that you bring to her business so that she can make more money, whether it's generate more leads, have more time to put into other areas. And then like the money piece can be a little bit in the later conversation, and you can frame it as like, in an effort to best serve you, these are the 2 streams that we can do. There's option A, it's going to be this much. It's option B, it's going to be this much. Let's talk about which one's the greatest fit for you, and like really let her make the decision. But a lot of times whenever we come up against money objections and thinking like, oh no, like she won't afford that. First of all, make sure that you're not choosing for her. Like right now I'm hearing you kind of choosing for her, being like, oh well, so take that out of the equation and really come from the space of like, well, let's present 2 options that are really great, and she's going to be able to make an empowered decision of how you can support her business there. And then if you're really showing the return on investment, the value, like really clearly of each one, well, then she's going to choose either one, and it's going to work out for you either way.
Yeah. And I'm going to add to that of when you present the options and you lead into, talking what the next steps are from here, if you guys are going to continue working together, I would really lead with the time. like how much time, like hours that you're working for her, like what the package is going to look like. Ask her, what does she feel is going to be the better package? Like, is she wanting to increase the hours, or is she feeling really good with the hours of where they're at? Like, don't say, are you feeling really good with the investment and where it's at? Do you feel really good with the number of hours I'm currently working for you? Or do you feel like an increase is something that you're wanting to do, and talk with that with her? And then, like Sven said, then go into, awesome, okay, well, if you're wanting to keep the hours the same, this is what the investment will be moving forward. And if you're wanting to increase the hours, then this is what the investment would be. So presenting it once she's already given you some more insight of what she really feels would be most valuable, once you've been able to present it to her, like leading with her business and the hours and the results. Because the money part should always come last.
Yeah. Okay. Yes.
Do you
yes.
feel
Totally.
pretty happy with the results so far?
Yeah. She's so at the monthly meeting, she said that she saw lots increase in the engagement, and then she had on the mailing list. She didn't have that many people joining for a long time, so she gave me lots of good return. So that's why I guess I was just worried for. I guess maybe I have some issue with money, so I guess that's why I was worried about her. Worried also about the price that she was putting there. But that's true. Maybe she would be happy to pay a bit more, but fine to not delegate more at the moment. And maybe in 2 months she will be okay. Now I'm ready to delegate. I will take the cheaper package or whatever. Okay.
Definitely. Sure. And it's very, very normal. Like, all of us, I'm sure everybody on the call can feel into the fact that, as an entrepreneur, it's hard to not be emotionally connected sometimes to the price that we're charging, and trying to decide for other people what they can and can't afford, and like all of that stuff is very, very normal. And like the way through it is to do your best at leading with the value, talking about the offer of like what you guys have done together, what you can do, and to me it's very much like a muscle. Like, it gets easier as you go and the more times you do it. But the biggest thing I can say is just don't immediately jump into the money, and don't use like assumptive language in the sense of assuming like, I know you might not be able to afford to increase. Like, just don't use any language.
Or you might not be willing to, or anything.
Yeah, just like let her decide. She says, "Well, I'm not willing to," or she might not say I'm not willing, but she might say something like, "I'm not looking to increase the hours right now." Well, then that package probably isn't going to make the most sense for her, and you don't have to like justify how that one's going to be a cheaper rate per hour. I would just at that point really talk about, to continue working together at the current rate is this, and really just honoring the fact that you gave her, like a special incentive price to start. Like, so it doesn't mean you have to continue with it. Like, she got a really great deal to basically try it out, more or less.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'll just add one more before we switch. I always say this goes for everyone here. Like, we have to remember that what is really selling through is the value and the return on investment. So Jen and I like to think of it as, a lot of times people aren't seeing the return on investment a lot of the time unless you're like really making it clear, repeating it in front of them. I like to think about it as like almost hitting them over the head with a tennis racket. Like, here's the value, here's the value, here's the value, so that they're so clear. And the more value and the more clear they are on the value, that really starts dissolving the price objection very, very quickly. So just keep bringing it back to the value and the ROI. Even if you feel like you're overdoing like how much you're talking about it, but you can't really do that, because that's the number one thing that will dissolve a price objection, is your client knowing what's in it for them.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Cool. Who is ready to go next? Chris, Cheryl? Awesome. Chris has got her hand up. Hey, Chris.
Hello. Nice to see you all.
Yeah, you too. What do you have going on right now? How can we help?
So yeah, I didn't really know where to start, so I listed some wins for myself. Like, part of why I haven't been in my business very much is because like my boss has me working at all the times, like with messages in between when I'm doing things. So it's taken a couple weeks, but finally I was able to say to her, like, look, if you want me to help you grow your company, we're going to have to be really focused on where my time is going. And I said to her, like, if I can give you 2/3 sales and 1/3 admin, we're going to grow this company. And it wasn't until I started really getting that laser focus for her that that's trickling into my business too.
Awesome.
And I'm really pleased about that. Like by accident, by my being really focused on sales, my business is growing. Like I got 3 bookings out of nowhere in the last 2 days for my spa birthday. So, and I felt really excited about that. But I had noticed, like, I get this aggression, like this real male, like, everyone get out of my fucking way. I got to make sales here. Like, it's real. And then I realized, if I go back to my why, like, oh, right, the joy, like, let's sell with joy and playfulness, right? Instead of with that aggression. So that only just came real for me, I don't know, a day and a half ago, where I was like, oh, like that's where that can sort of support and change my attitude, because I was starting to get mad at everybody. Even my boss, I was like, you got to focus. So that felt really good.
Those are some
And I find because I get so, pardon?
I was just gonna say those are.
I find because I get so, okay, I get so scattered with like all the things I'm working on. So I made these power statements that help me stay focused, and I read them like 3 times a day. Like they say things like, I post consistently, because I'll forget. Like it just falls out of my head. Like even I joined a fitness program, but even that falls out of my head. Like, oh right, that thing I'm doing. So I made power statements, and there's a lot. There's actually 43, but they're just like reminders of like, you know, I do this thing. I post consistently, which wasn't true, but it actually became true then, because all of a sudden, I finally took the time to watch that video on Canva, and I made some really horrible graphics for my Facebook page and I put them out there, and I was really proud of myself for like, let's just schedule some posts, you know, and not try to make it perfect. So that felt really good. And the whole pick your one important thing, like it hadn't really been becoming true, but it's starting to finally come true now, like where the one important thing is actually getting done. And that's kind of what the power statements were too. Like I was sort of making those the side things that you need to run your business and to be healthy, right? Like that kind of thing. So they're just like, some of them are true statements, but some of them are more like what I'm aspiring to be, and that's been helpful. I did a little trade show on the weekend in the small town where I live, and it got a bowl full of names, and this is the first time I'm actually going to be following up with all the names, because usually, you know, you get all the names and you're like, what the fuck am I gonna do with them now? So I made a little video to follow up with them, and I'm proud of that, because usually I don't know, I don't know, it's already what day is it today? Wednesday. So it was on the weekend, so it's time to start following up with them. So I made a video to reach out and tell them a little bit more about Spossum and stuff like that. So maybe a question is, and I'm learning to like push through the discomfort, like realizing that that's just reality and it's okay to be uncomfortable. So that helped me when I was getting bored at the trade show, and when it got slow, because usually I'm like, oh no, and all this panic sets in, like, no one's coming, my investment's wasted, no, I'm in the wrong business. Like actually every single fear thought in the world comes up at those trade shows for me. And then I was like, oh, right, don't be stupid. You paid $30 for this table. And it's okay to be bored. Like, it's okay. It doesn't mean you're in the wrong business. Like, I worked through a lot, and it was really incredible.
Awesome.
Yeah, I guess I'm looking for some ways to streamline some stuff and make stuff easier. Like, I feel like I'll sit, like at nighttime, I'll journal, and I'll be like, oh, right, I should do that thing. I make a little star, and I write down the thing, and I keep journaling, and then something else pops up like, oh yeah, that would have been easier if I did this. So I make a little star, but I actually forget to go back to the journal. And then I'm just like, boom, in my day, do. And then that night I go journal. I'm like, oh, this is all the shit you meant to implement. And then I put it in like all these places. Like I'll put them in my book for the next day, and I'll put them somewhere else. And then I'll find another journal. And like, it's sort of like, where do I get the reminder, the you know what's called like, not really reminder, but when one thing happens, like the domino, like the first domino is always there, but I never trip it to make it happen. So that's sort of like organizing, maybe. I'm not sure where to, because I have all these ideas of action, but I forget to look at it.
Yeah, that sounds to me like in the organization and time management realm. And like on the organization side of things, I feel like one really simple thing would be to condense and like have just one journal. So that way you don't have different notes happening in different places, and have just like your one go-to journal. And then on the time management planning side of things, like one thing that works really well for us is the day, instead of like the day of, because it's so easy to like get up in the morning and all of a sudden like the day is here and you just start kind of going, is to plan your day the night before. Like actually take a look at what have you written in the journal that day, what do you have like scheduled for the following day, and create like what we call like your plan of action for your following days. So that way if you had like some big breakthrough say in your journal, and you like put a star of like, oh, make sure I, add this to my affirmations list, or I should definitely try this when I'm doing sales. If you have a sales thing going on the next day, like actually going and putting a note. Like if you look like, I don't know if you're more of a pen and paper kind of person, or a Google Doc, or Google Calendar. Like there's no real right or wrong, but it's like every night, like Spence and I have our whiteboards. I don't know if you can see them. I just flipped it around. But yeah,
nice.
We have like our focus for the day. We go through and we discuss like out of the week of what needs to get done and who's doing what. And then that includes like life things as well, or any kind of like breakthroughs or awarenesses. Like I'm making sure, and Spencer's making sure, that they're getting scheduled in the night before, so that we actually can remember. Because otherwise it's just so human to just like lose those things in the shuffle. So like right now with your scheduling, are you sitting down the night before to really take a look at the following day, or are you kind of getting up in the morning and just getting into it?
It's both. Like I'm trying to pick that one important thing the day before. And now with telling my boss, like being really a bit more hard-assed about like her not taking up so much of my time, because like it's pulling all the time. And so yesterday, and that's where I'm like, I want to, but then I turn into pure frustration when it doesn't work. Like we had a meeting at 12 that was supposed to go for half an hour, and then meet again at 1 that was also supposed to just be a quick touch point. And then I was supposed to have a break where a girl gets to piss and eat actually. And it was, can we talk right now? And every single meeting led into the other. And I just wanted to like throw the computer at her, like stop making the meetings go over. And then so like, and I told her yesterday, I said like, do you really need me on this and this and this meeting that's happening tomorrow, or can I focus on sales? And if you record it and there was something important, I'll go back and listen. And she was like, good idea. So she needs to be like fed every like I can tell her that, but I need to actually say what it means. It means I won't be at the meeting. Yeah, so that's gonna help with her not pinging. But I know part of it is it's partly my own excuse too, that it hasn't ever happened before, so I almost feel like I need to clean my slate, because like that past of being pulled with my old company was always pulled by the customers and always pulled by production issues, and pulled by all the shoulds and stuff. I haven't had this luxury of it just being like, with Spossum I can add systems, but I don't have a lot of real work with Spossum until there's a booking, like besides the proactive sales that I get to plan myself. So this is a luxury, and part of me is like afraid of that freedom a little bit.
Yeah, I feel like Cheryl nailed it on the work side of things of boundaries. She wrote in the comments, and I feel like you've already started to do that.
Yeah.
So just continuing to exercise that muscle of setting boundaries. And I know this is somebody who you've been work for, so just finding that balance between setting boundaries but being working with them. But I think you've already started doing that in a really effective way by saying, if by not doing this thing, I can be doing this thing. Like what you're basically doing with that is reminding her like what's in it for her. Like why are you recommending the thing you're recommending? So I feel like setting boundaries, but just explaining the reasoning as you do it. So then that way they stick because then they understand. And then the other 50% I feel like is more you stuff that you're working through, like your own time management, your own excuses. But just from what you've said so far on this call, it sounds like you already have been like karate chopping through a lot of these things. So I think it's more of a organizational kind of thing than it is about like the fear and the limiting belief kind of stuff. Like the excuses come up. To eliminate the excuses is to set yourself up for success, and take a look at like what might stop me from doing this thing, or what, if I know that if I
like that, asking ahead of time.
Yeah, like being proactive, not reactive, and just thinking about, okay, well, I know I have a tendency to have a great idea and then forget about it. So what do I need to do to remember? Like, I know for me, on my like daily list, I put my one thing, like my top priority, and then below it, I have like a subsection, where I'm like, okay, if I get my one thing done, that's my focus. But if I'm being effective, and I usually do that thing first thing in the morning, it's like then I still do have a whole day to get other things done. So I still want to have that list of like the other shit I need to do. Because otherwise, then you're just like scratching your head afterwards, being like, hey, I did my one thing. Now what should I do? And then you're falling into that trap. So I prioritize and make it nice, big, like this is my one thing. And then I put like a line. So I'm like, okay, anything beyond that is like bonus at this point. And then I'll have my list, and I'm like, okay, there's like the non-negotiables. Like after I do my one thing, then I get into like client messages and emails, like those sorts of things. And then after those things is the other stuff. So if I'm like, okay, like today, I need to call the credit card company, and I need to, order some stuff online, and I need to sit and journal and go through these things. Like I put them in a priority list, and then I just start crossing them off. And that helps so much just to visually see them, but to
I love that
proactive state in advance, because it really squashes those excuses. Like for me, if I don't write workout on my board, then I forget to do my workout. So I write it on the board, and I put it up higher in the day because I'm much more likely to do it if it's earlier in the day. So you have to find your groove of what works for you. But the biggest thing I can say that works for everybody to some level is to do it in advance. Like write it out in advance, so then you have something to follow.
And I love this so much. Thank you.
Yeah.
I always underestimate how long I'm going to take to. Like I'll be, I could schedule and be like, oh, that's like 6 days worth right there. It is. So I need a bit of reality check too.
Yeah, and I think like part of that, like number one is a lot of the time, like it's so true. Like statistically, what it takes us 60 minutes to do, if we're being effective with it, usually we can get it done in 20 minutes. So a lot of the time to check in whether or not you're trying to do other stuff at the same time,
multitasking.
And multitasking. So could you actually do it faster? And you're actually like taking some breaks to just be, and just zone out in between, so you don't feel like you're just jumping from thing to thing to thing, and you actually give yourself time to eat lunch and not think about other stuff while you're eating your lunch, and do those things. And yeah, just getting in and scheduling those things as well. Anything else?
No, you kind of hit.
I loved your tip. Go
ahead, Chris.
Go ahead.
Sorry. I loved your tips about like monitoring your time too, like watching how much you're on social media. Like a lot of my work is social media based, so I'm seeing the pop-ups and I'm tempted. And I'm like, I'll just check, and it's like, oh my God, she says Mary Kay. Let's check the Mary Kay catalog. I do need some new skincare. Like, oh man. And then I'm like, oh, just take a second, like, how do you reel it in?
I think it's a good thing.
It's a self-discipline thing where You actually just have to set time, like schedule time in for you to take care of your social media, and then just turn the notifications off, because like it's a lie. It's a lie that you need to get back right away and sales will be lost if you're not getting back right away. Like the best thing you can do is, like, if a lot of people and a lot of our clients are, us as well, are like, our social media is a huge strategy for generating leads and making sales. But you have to really look at like the rest of your business as well, and like ask yourself, how much more effective could you be with your day? How much more could you enjoy your day if you were what I call batching social media, where maybe you set up an hour in the morning and an hour in the evening, where you're not gray zoning at that point. Like, you're doing social media, you're checking messages, you're following up with people, you're getting back on Facebook Messenger, and then when that hour is done, you're stopping. And then all the time in between, when you check next, like, you're not looking at it, you're not like, and it comes down to self-discipline, because the way Facebook and social media is set up, it actually is designed to give us dopamine hits. So every time those notifications go off, they're playing on our subconscious, and there's a release of the chemical dopamine, serotonin, and Facebook knows this. So that's why everything is being set up and continues to get more set up, so that it's gamifying. So really the only way we can reduce the addiction, like the real addiction because of the dopamine that we're addicted to, is to actually self-discipline ourselves to batch it out. And you can find the schedule that works for you, whether, it makes sense for your business to do it early in the morning or in the afternoon or in the evening, or, half an hour of each. But really, I challenge you to find out what time works for you. Set some hard timelines that, when this is done at an hour, like, I'm not doing social media to the next time. And just take notice, like, are you more effective? Do you feel better in between? Do you get more things accomplished outside of the social media? And yeah, that's really been a game changer for Jenna and myself. And like, we'll admit, like, it's actually not really easy because of the fact it is gamified and the dopamine is a real addiction. And like, I'm always catching Jenna gray zoning out on social media. And, sometimes we'll like literally be having a conversation about something, and, up comes the phone, and like, it's crazy. Like, it's the time we're living in. And the best thing we can do is to really just discipline ourselves and treat it like a tool rather than a lifestyle.
Cool. Thank you. That's awesome.
You're welcome. Cheryl, do you have some stuff today? It looks like you're outside. It looks beautiful out. I'm going to unmute you.
My neighbor's dog just came over, which is great for my puppy, but my other dog is going to start barking like a maniac, so hopefully I can keep him entertained. He gets really jealous when they play together, so he just barks and barks and barks and barks. But this is perfect because my dog has been like, let me put this in my mouth. Let me put that in my mouth. Let me grab your guacamole off the table. And I'm like, anyways. So I guess for me, everything's been going really well. A lot of the work we've been doing has been super helpful in getting me clear and putting words to actions, which is something that I struggle with. But of course, it's like you ask and you shall receive. So I had my real estate license, and that was like my transition out of corporate to be able to pay my bills and do my business. And then a friend of mine, of course, who has his own company, who's like, hey, do you want to work for my company for me? Sorry about that. And you can have your own hours and do what you want to do. And like, it is a great setup. I won't doubt that. But now my struggle is like, I'm like, hey, I need money, universe. Like, can you help me with this? And then it all comes flooding in. And then I feel like I'm just incredibly overwhelmed and pulled in 5 different directions. And so I definitely get that grass is greener kind of like, okay, I need this for now and we'll phase it out, but I know I never will. And so that's my frustration. It's very hard for me to pull myself away. Like, my in-laws are moving. So now, since I have my real estate license at the beginning of this year, it's like, I'm not really going to do much. And they're like, hey, can you list our house for us? And I was like, sure. But now I'm like, not that it's hard, or it's just like, I'm like, now I'm literally trying to do 3 different things and I don't want to be. And because of the circumstances, it's like a test of like, okay, I usually am able to say no to everybody, but it's like, oh, here are these people that you really don't want to say no to. And here's this other person, my friend's company is now like really starting to pick up, and he's getting a lot of really big clients, which is great. And I'm essentially his director of private operations right now, which I don't know how I'm doing that. I am, but I don't know how. But it's one of those things that, like, eventually, and he knows it's not like a permanent thing. I have to peel myself away from these things, but it's hard because I'm trying to get my coaching where I want it to be and really streamlined. But that also takes time, and I don't want to put a monetary pressure on it. But in the same vein, I do still need, money as an energetic. I got to pay for things. I have bills I have to pay for. So it's a struggle that I've always had. As soon as I'm like, hey, things are going great, but it's like a faucet. It's either full on or completely off. And I'm trying to get that balance going, but it's really hard. And it's like I feel like every time it happens, and it's happened many times in the past, I definitely I'm like, I'm going to say no, and I'm able to put my foot down and say no. And then the next time there's like a little variation that makes it a little harder to say no. Like this time I should have really said no to my in-laws about listing their place, but I didn't. And I should have. I really should have, even though they're close by and it's easy for the most part. I just, but now I'm in it. And so I'm kind of like, all right, well, what do I need? Should I get out of this? Should I just stick it out? And so I get stuck sometimes on that hamster wheel. So I don't know if you have any advice or input for those instances when that happens, and not getting sucked into that constant merry-go-round. And then, the more it picks up speed, the worse it gets.
Well, it's always an interesting situation, right? When you're coming up against actually having to pay your bills, and then of course you have that delicate balance of well, is the coaching thing going to take off quick enough that it's going to meet my bills in the immediate short term versus having other sources of income? I don't really think there's a right or wrong answer with what to do it. I know from our personal experience, when we were building stuff, we actually did have other jobs to just get us by, and it just turned into a very intense period in our life where we were juggling other jobs and working on building Soul Meat Strategy. And it really just kind of comes down to a time management and prioritizing scenario. I won't lie, we weren't loving having to do that, but sometimes it's that case of you got to do what you got to do. And if you look at all the entrepreneurs all throughout history who've had massive amounts of success, there's a lot of that where they're working late nights or staying up, all of these things. But in your particular scenario, what would you say, Jenna? I don't really think there's a right or wrong.
Yeah, and I think one thing that's really important both for your scenario and just that I've seen from so many, including us, is not to get caught into shooting yourself, where you're like, oh, well, I should be further along by now, or I should be able to better juggle these things, or I should have more, it's very easy when you're on that roller coaster to start coming up with all of these should scenarios of what it should look like. And I think it's really important to come back down to earth of okay, what does it actually look like right now? If nobody was telling me how it should look, and I wasn't looking at other entrepreneurs and how fast they did something, or I wasn't looking at some people who couldn't make it work, or all these things. It's you just look at your scenario, where you're at, because it's your own journey. It's bringing it back to that and just realizing that sometimes it really just does take good old fashioned work. Now, we want to make sure that you don't get burnt out, right? Because I've certainly been on the verge of that. And I think a lot of people go through that, but also not buying into the story that really gets put out, especially on social media, that people just launch their thing and it's just magic and it's so good. It's no, it's hard and it takes fucking work.
People are crying in the bedroom. Constantly
getting trained, basically the universe is are you sure you're serious? Are you sure you're serious? You sure you're serious? It's and it never really stops, to be honest. It just shows up in different ways. Spence and I, even, it was 2 or 3 days ago, we had an ultimate kind of low day. It was just, when you just have shitty day and the vibes and you're just I don't even know. And just everything just feels like shit. And it really isn't that shitty, but it just feels like shit. Every single time we have one of those kind of days where it feels like everything's bubbled up and it's just a lot, and we're at the high of the roller coaster. And then the next day or shortly thereafter, it's like massive breakthroughs come through. And I think a lot of that happens because we look at it always from like a state now of being curious instead of being like, oh man, like why is this all happening and being thrown at me? And I feel like you're already in the realm of doing that where you know it's like training being thrown your way. And sometimes, even if it's not like a magic answer, it's like sometimes you really are just kind of having to ride the wave and bring in like the best possible kind of time management that you can. And if that includes getting up an hour earlier or staying up an hour later, especially too, because it's still so important to schedule in your own self-care, you know, and prioritizing your relationship. So, I mean, if that means you getting up and you're doing the realtor stuff for half an hour every second day, or I don't know how long it takes, but you schedule it in, you get it done, you know, and then from there, you know that on Monday, Wednesday, Fridays, you're going to Pilates. Like it takes like just a lot of really self-disciplined time management is I think what it really comes down to, while forward thinking of how do you want to be creating it looking forward. Like I know right now with getting into these validation calls and stuff with the immersion, like the coaching style work, that these next couple of clients are coming. And I feel like this transitionary time for you, it is coming and it's going to make sense because then you're going to be like, okay, you're going to hit like that kind of wall of like, okay, well now I have 2 or 3 or 4 or whatever new clients right now. So I can't do this thing and something's going to give. And then you're going to have to, you know, say for the side work you're doing or the real estate work or whatever, you're going to have to release something. But I think right now it's like continuing to move forward just until you hit like the real breaking point where you're like, okay, I have to release something because it won't be sustainable.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It makes sense. Like right now I'm pretty good. Like my time management, because I've kind of eased into all this stuff, my time management is really good and I'm on top of that. And because it's also like what I really enjoy doing. You know, it's one of those things that make sure my other dog is, oh, there it is. Okay. You know, it is really good in that sense of like having time for myself. Like I still go to the gym 3 days a week. I ride my bike. I go hiking. I'm out walking the dog, like as well as balancing everything. That's all there. And so, I mean, it's one of those things that, you know, I know eventually everything's going to kind of go where it needs to go when it's time to shift around. And I do, you know, the stuff that I'm doing with my friend who I'm working as like essentially a consultant for him, it's been really good, not only because it's helping pay the bills, but also because it's a good experience. Like I'm essentially helping him, like I'm coaching him because we've been friends for 15 years. We found each other through a mutual job previously. And he came to me and he's like, I'm the only person that's like senior here that's doing everything. He's like, please come on and help me. And so for me, it's like, I'm really like, without coaching him, but kind of with coaching him, not intentionally, but like he defers to me for things. And he's like, so now I'm actually helping him. I'm like, you need to get up a tracking sheet together because we have like 6 or 7 employees now and we're growing much bigger because there's a lot of large projects that are slated to come in later this year, which he's going to have to hire more people for. And so I'm like, well, now's the time to put these systems in place and get everything together. And, you know, I tell him because he runs himself on 85 cylinders and to the ground. So all of this has been a really good experience for me because like last year he made $250,000 and this year he's slated to make $500,000. So I'm already working with, he's like essentially the type of client that I want, except he's a man instead of a woman. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but you know, my targeted ideal client is female. But it's been a really good learning experience. So I'm very happy with all of it. It's just, I know, like personally, I can't multitask. I just know that's how I let myself do that. But it's that matter of like, not, you know, I've gotten pretty good at saying no to a lot of things. Just making sure that I know when to, I guess, pull out of all that. When I know like, okay, this is when it's time to shift right now, you know, like make that transition and not continue down what I'm doing and trying to do it all. And then mistakenly I drop a ball, you know, and it's not, you know, necessarily something that I want to drop, essentially is what I'm saying. And I don't want to risk, you know, trying to walk that line, that tightrope, and then maybe not it having that just enough of an impact on my coaching business that I'm kind of stuck in this weird spot of limbo, you know. And so that's what I'm trying to balance because this is something that's happened kind of repeatedly over the years. And sometimes I feel like it is maybe the reason why things haven't progressed beyond what where I've gotten to in those instances, because I'm like, oh, you know, just a little bit more and I'll make that leap. And then eventually I did make that leap, and you know, and held on, you know, as long as I could with what I was doing and how I was doing it, until I needed to kind of pick up more outside stuff to kind of supplement what I had going on as well. And yeah, so it's just making sure that I am stay in check, I guess. You know, I have the routine down, I have the time management down. I've burnt out before, so I know exactly what to do to make that not happen again. It's happened multiple times in the past. I'm on top of all that. It's just a matter of making sure that I know when to transition, you know, and I might just know. It might be like a feeling or whatnot, but yeah, just making sure that I'm not drawing it out longer than I should that's just where my, I guess, worry comes in a little bit with all of that. But it seems like I'll probably know when it's time.
I think you will, and I feel like this is where like having Spence and I and stuff comes in as well, and having your support network of sometimes we get so close to our thing that we can't see it. So making sure that, you know, with us and the other people in your network as well that are supporting you, to keep them in the loop of, you know, as you bring on more clients and things happen, that you keep us posted and you keep them posted, so that, you know, you're going to know it and you're going to feel it, but also just making sure that you have the network in place to help you with that transition and get the feedback of saying, hey, you know, I'm thinking that this is time now to release this thing, or, you know, it's time now to do this. Like, ask for feedback, because even Spence and I, like any entrepreneur, any leader who, you know, is getting to where they want to be, asks for feedback, you know, and checks in and does those things in case maybe they aren't seeing something that the other person can see. So I feel like that's going to be like a really valuable tool for you, especially in this particular circumstance of like you said, it's been a pattern, but I also feel like you're way more in tune with yourself than maybe you were in the past with this. And because of that pattern, like you're hypersensitive, like hyper aware to what that looks and feels like. So I think that's actually going to be an asset to you in this transition, like in the now. So yeah, I feel like you are on the right track. Like I wouldn't go dropping anything that you have right now and making any hasty decisions, but I would be like a no ninja, you know, like how you commented, like boundaries, like new stuff that comes your way that you don't think is in alignment with the direction you want to go. Be very, very, very selective to what you say yes to, and just realize that, you know, you want to be your word and say things. That's why sometimes, you know, you don't have to respond immediately. And I still catch myself doing this. I had somebody ask me if I could like be a testimonial for their book this week. And I was like, immediately was just like, yes. And then he's like, great, can we get on a call tomorrow? And I was like, oh no, I'm fully booked. He's like, oh, I need you to read my book this week. And I was like, okay, well actually, you know, and I backed out. Like, and I was just like, I actually still felt like I was into integrity, because I was like, even if I said yes, was I actually going to read the book, or was I just, you know, like I was just, so I was like, no, like that was just the universe being like, no, stop saying yes to stuff that you don't need to say yes to right now. So just making sure that when people ask you, before you like immediately say yes, just like take a hot second and ask yourself a question before responding yes right away to somebody.
Yeah.
I feel like that's part of the training, is you'll probably get thrown some other stuff that you'll have to say no to.
Yeah. And that's one of those things that, yeah, I'm like, even with my real estate license, I'm kind of like I'm paid up for like, I think it's 2 years now. So I can, you know, I can keep it without necessarily any major expense. And, you know, I'm like, kind of like, oh, I'll just, you know, it's fine as a resource. But yeah, I like after this, like with my in-laws, I'm done. Like I was kind of done before that, but I always kind of knew like, oh, if they're going to sell their house, like I'll just do that and it'll be for them. And, you know, but sometimes I've, you know, and it's funny because I know I've had the experiences of like, sometimes dealing with family is almost worse, not to be negative, but it's like, it's sometimes harder, I should say. And so I even with this, I've been very, you know, when I'm doing the realtor thing, I'm the realtor and I'm very professional with them and I treat them the same way I treat everybody else. And I treat it as that, so that it's two separate things. So there's nothing personal. So it's not like, you know, so if something needs to be changed or shifted or, you know, we need to tweak things, it's not this like, oh, I'm afraid to say anything. It's like, no, this is what I would tell anybody. And this is what I'm going to tell you, whether I know you or not, you know, whether I'm related to you or not, you know, this is how it's going to be, or this is what you need to do, and trying to keep them really separated so that it isn't that weird gray area that sometimes people fall into when you do business with family members. Which happens occasionally. So and I think after that I'm just kind of really be done with it and just saying no. I mean, luckily my brokerage, one of the perks I guess of continuing with all this is they do have a mentorship program. So I'm actually a mentor right now to other realtors. There's 3 other realtors that I work with through them. So it's great because I can also, I'll get paid when they close deals and stuff, and I'm helping them with the real estate, more logistics of it and things. Some of them know a lot, some of them don't. But it's a good practice, for me, as far as it's a little different than how I'm going to run my own regular coaching business, but it is really good practice to do all of that and get in that routine and set everything up and, know that I'm, my check-ins and what I'm going to use on the back end and stuff like that. So everything's kind of got its positives, but yeah, I think I'm good with all of that. Cause having that somebody to defer to and be like, hey, what do you think about this? Is this, and having that feedback will be really good, I think.
I agree. And I feel like right now, like a positive in all of this is that the work, most of the extra work that you're doing right now is in the wheelhouse, at least, of what you're wanting, what you are building with your own business, even if it's not exactly it. It's at least right now, it's you're not working doing something that you totally despise. It's not anything connected to what you want to do. So even though we know it's not long term, at least it is providing experience even more. I know you have the experience already, but it's in that realm, which I just feel is keeping you in the energy of what it is you're building, which I think is really good. It can still keep and create that momentum. So yeah, I feel like right now that makes sense if you feel good with how to keep handling this right now and just keeping us in the loop and just not making any hasty decisions of taking stuff on or dropping stuff.
Yeah.
Good. Cool, ladies.
Awesome.
Yeah.
No, I think you nailed it.
Awesome.
So we're going to get this replay up in the group for anyone who wants to dive back in. And of course, keep posting in the group and we'll be in there later today.
Yep. Awesome, guys. Thanks for joining us.
See you, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Nice to see you.